Uh, I think we are ready to start. I would like to welcome you to this session about principle of direct drilling. My name is Erik Sandal. I'm a local advisor, and I have the pleasure to be the moderator of this session on direct drilling. We have tried direct drilling for some years in Denmark with not so big success. 2 years ago, I was in Argentina to see how they use this system. I was very impressed about the system, the yields, and the low cost they have. And therefore, it's a very big question if we can use this system under our climate conditions. And to answer this question, we have invited a farmer from Germany, Mr. Hartwig Carlsen. And I think you can introduce yourself and tell what your experience about this system is. And we'll take your speech now, and then we'll have question in the end. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. Now after a good lunch, it's my job to keep you awake with a theme, principles of direct drilling and my experiences. So that's a topic I could talk hours about and we could discuss days. I have only half an hour, so I will have a quick talk and you have to learn quick or take it up quick. So here we go. It's in the starting page you see already 3 principles of my way of direct drilling. One is growing a cover crop as much as possible. This is a trial here with a overwintering forage rye cover crop, and this was a spring oats cover crop died by frost. To keep soil growing or something growing on the soil as much and as long as possible. Principle 1. Principle 2 is keeping permanent tram lines very easily as they will remain visible. You can get them away or again every year, again and again. So that's a little bit like controlled traffic for poor farmers. Principle 3 is drilling at an angle. You see in the autumn the cover crop was drilled at that angle. Now I'm drilling beans in April at this angle. And harvest is going up and down usually. So with a chaser bin and with a combine we're going up and down. But drilling always at opposite angles to keep the field level and to avoid that by the years there would occur mini ruts from wheelings a little bit. And so when you go at an angle, you keep the field level and you have less trouble with residue because the old roots from the previous crop you always hit at an angle, so you never go along the same lines. That's where I come from, very close to the Danish border, so just across the Flensburger Förde, and there's Denmark, so very similar situations, similar soils to most of your soils along the Baltic Sea, and same climate, and average farm size 100 hectares, and we had for a plow and power harrow and rape, winter wheat, winter barley, so very usual average farm. And in '96 I got the first time in touch with direct drilling when I was in New Zealand, and kept on, or my interest kept on that time over the years, and then as the internet became more and more available and more information available and connections worldwide, I got more, with the first years of 2000, I got more and more information, and in 2006 I was confident enough to buy a used single disc drill for starting direct drilling. So in 2007 my first cash crop, or my first beans went in with direct drilling. What has driven me to that? I observed only the few years I am a farmer now, I observed that the soils become more and more problem. So wet, sticky, we have, as you know, loamy soils, so sandy loam, and very loamy on the hilltops, eroded over centuries. And so that became more and more a problem. So here we have a photo, 2005, a wheat min-tilled after oilseed rape, very good establishment in September, I think, and in April, here's the spot over the hilltop. It's already drying because there's pure loam. Here it's too wet. It's just 1 or 2 meters below, too wet, and here's a small stripe where it's a good crop, or could be a good crop. So it's changing very much, and it's become more and more problems, I felt. Also a problem, erosion, not every year, but when we get not even a thunderstorm, but only a heavy rain, it will wash down the hills, and that's a usual situation that we take for normal, but it is over the decades or centuries, this will cause big problems. Here you see after a thunderstorm, washed down the hills, and the sediment in the gully was that thick, so all the best soil for my field was washed down, kept on the field, but not there where it should be. And also problems with blackgrass coming up more and more, clubroot in the oilseed rape, and slugs. And now after a few years direct drilling, I have widened up my rotation, so clubroot is not a problem anymore. Blackgrass, all farmers are very concerned about blackgrass. I have no worry about that anymore. It's absolutely no problem and easy to control. Only slugs are still, or even in those wet years now, the last years, increased problem. And so my problem the last years was too much rain and too much slugs. So if those both were only half of what we got, it would have been much easier. Over the last years, I found out or learned to think about what nature does, or what nature seems to do by evolution. So it's a bit the way learning by from nature, bionic, like it's humans have always done. Like Leonardo da Vinci looked at the bird and constructed a plane, and in engineering, it's a very common science to copy advantages from nature and bring it into common knowledge or common science. So I think when we do direct drilling and do no more tillage anymore, we have to make things totally different. So starting direct drilling would be easier if we would have a forget all pill. So take a pill and you forget everything you knew before, so you can have a clean starting point and don't fall back into your old knowledge and be tempted to get out the plow or the cultivator again. So what is nature doing, or what nature do in a usual way here in our area? We would have forest, and nature covers the soil all year round against wind and rain. That is common knowledge, because when we have erosion, it's wind erosion or water erosion. So to avoid that, it's the easiest way to cover the soil. But in the last years, I thought more and more about the impact of sunlight. So we need nature is shading the soil in different canopies here, so there's no sunlight ever hitting the soil. And not even, it's just an idea from me, because there's no research going on. I think not only the visible sunlight, for us humans visible, there's different wavelengths and different radiation coming from the sun or from the atmosphere, and maybe harming or influencing the soil, and especially soil life. Soil life is what we have to work with in direct drilling. So that's a new point. Sunlight, protection against sunlight, I think can be very important, but it's just a feeling and an idea from me. So now, knowing that it would be a good improvement to copy nature, what have we farmers done in that way over the last centuries? So farming is very old and a lot of time to improve things and copy from nature. What have we done? Desert. We take it for usual to turn our arable land into desert, be it only for 5 or 4 or 6 weeks after a cereal crop and oilseed rape, or like it is here on my neighboring fields after forage maize, harvested in end of September, plowed to desert, and not being covered or protected against sunlight before June. So only 3 months a year where it is a fairly amount of shade on the soil. No ground cover, nothing at all. Only a little bit of shade for 3 months out of 12. So we turn it into 3/4 of the year into desert. this is biologically or evolutionary from a nature's point of view, it's a desert, nothing else. All microorganisms have nothing to feed on. They don't disappear or die. They just go into permanent, into eggs or anything like that, and have to develop and re-establish when nature comes back. So when a crop is planted and roots are growing. So roots are very important for the soil. Only a small work of the roots is to take up nutrients and water for the plant. Even the bigger work of the roots is to secrete exudates into the soil, to stimulate soil life, feed soil microorganisms. So it's very important to have growing roots all year round, or as close as all year round, if it's possible in a cropping system. So this is just neighboring fields from my neighbor. He seeded some triticale in mid of October, but that's, you see, no soil structure, hammered down from the rain. It's all nearly or very close to dead soil. You have to know that 3 to 5 tons living organisms are hungry on each hectare. So when you harvest your cereals, you can grow maybe 1 ton or 1.5 ton in the stables by your livestock, but you have to feed the triple of that underneath your feet. So how can you do that? How can you take care of them? Different ways. Like I showed in the desert, they will die for hunger, or not really die, but just disappear, waiting for a new chance to come up and breed again and re-establish. They can live on a diet. That's sadly enough, but that are my fields this winter. I took all these pictures between Christmas and New Year just 2 weeks ago. So these are my fields, winter wheat after beans, winter wheat after oilseed rape, all drilled in first days of October, and this is just volunteer wheat in a wheat stubble. So sadly enough, I was not able, the last 2 wet autumns, not able to establish a cover crop, or not brave enough to do it. I was always waiting, okay, tomorrow it could be better, and then it rained again. So I have now 2 seasons with no cover crops and microorganisms or soil life on diet. And I see the soil suffering from that. So even it's much better than this, having a little bit of soil cover, but still it's not what we want to achieve, or what I would want. Or the way I would like to go to fatten up the soil life. So here, also just 2 weeks ago, one side is a permanent pasture, other side is desert. So digging up there, you would find a lot of roots, a lot of living organisms, crumble soil. And as I showed in the close-up photos here, it's hammered down, all washed together, no particles visible anymore. Here are cover crops I grew before those 2 wet autumns. So this is sunflower and oats, drilled after winter barley, end of July, I think, and this photo is taken end of October. My son was nearly a meter tall that time. And here's a cover crop mix I grew for a trial for a seed company. Also some variable or more species to fix or to have a gap for every species. So I would like to have that every autumn, but unfortunately weather was against me the last 2 years. So this is the basic principle. It was printed in the papers for this event and at FRDK Nüdecke also, so you know it already. I made that on my own to show about my ideas, what direct drilling is about. And this, when we look at nature and want to copy nature and learn from nature, what is nature doing? Just dropping the seed where the mother plant was living, covering it maybe with a dead plant or with some leaves. Some seeds are trampled in the soil by any animals, others are on top. So it's very inefficient, a good germination only by accident. But when it grows, it's permanent. It's a perfect environment. It's a cover on the seedling, moist soil underneath, and usually not much competition, because the mother plants have left a clean or not much competition for the seedlings, and the soil is absolutely undisturbed. When we look what we do with the plow, we bury all residues below the seed zone, which leads to very good conditions for germination. So that's a very good, very big advantage for the plow, to have a clean seed bed, very good conditions for germinating the young seed, and having a very quick and easy and nearly foolproof use development of the seedlings, which is already very important. So the plow, that may be the main reason for the plow. But after the use stage, when the roots are growing into this decomposing residues, it can harm the roots, and we see sometimes in the late autumn that the crops are suffering or not growing anymore, because the kickstart and the boost of nitrogens and decomposing all the soil life microorganisms, when we just plow it down and get the seed into the soil, it's disappeared, and now it normalizes a bit after a few weeks, and ties up nitrogen and leaves toxic exudates from the residue, and soil life is totally disturbed. Min-till, that was the way actually I wanted to go the first years. When I bought the drill, I wanted to go over a few years, leave the plow, do more min-till, and try to dip my toe into no-till. But I did it 2 years and found out that it's an absolutely wired system. It didn't work for me anyhow, and I wasn't happy with it, because residue is everywhere. So you have it not only below the seed, you don't even have a good condition for germination, because you put the new seed into the decaying toxic residue of the plants. So here you have an easy start and a quick start for the seedling, but here, if you don't manage it very properly, and if the weather is against you, for example, you have problems from the start to the beginning. It's absolutely, in my understanding, learning from nature is a wired system. And the solution for this is the no-till system. Copied by the ancient people, when they took a stick and made a hole in the ground, set the seedling, and trampled on top of it to make a good environment for growing. I think this practice is also developed by evolution, because those primitive people who observed nature and found out that is working, they were the fitter and survived in competition about life. So they copied nature, and we should do the same. Don Rajkowski told me this morning that this is a very good graphic, but it's not good enough, because here it looks that there's still fairly much soil disturbance, so the row spacing is not wide enough. In reality, I have 16.6 centimeters row spacing, and when only shallow seeding for oilseed rape is maybe a centimeter strip, and deep seeding for beans it will be 3 or 4 centimeter disturbed soil. So very or fairly low soil disturbance. If you have double disc planter, it will be even less.
I hope we have some questions, so please come on.
What about your yields? How it's doing compared to your neighbors, and what about your economy compared to your neighbors in your area?
Yes, very hard to say, because we have 2 very strange years. Wet harvest, delayed harvest. I can hardly compare my wheat yields, or say 2 years ago, I was the last farmer in my surrounding combining my wheat. I got it dry, but it was 4 weeks standing in the rain, so I have lost maybe 2 tons an hectare by this period, so I can't compare it. So the last 2 years were so strange, I don't really want to compare. The first years were encouraging. As I said, 9 tons barley, and the variation the last years was very wide. So you all know the wheat yields this last season and the season before was between 5 tons and 10 tons maybe, when you hear some different. And that's the same on my farm. I always do one field that way and make trials, so I have not a real comparison. It's very hard to say. I know the last 2 seasons were very difficult for me, especially because you need a transition period when you go to no-till. The soil has to build up, your knowledge has to build up, and that takes, I would say, 5, maybe up to 10 years, and the last 2 years really have driven me back. So I can't say that I have better yields, had some big problems, but always had the situation that I knew what should have went wrong, so I knew some improvement for the next year. But I'm sorry, I can't have any real figures that I can say that's it. It's not really possible.
Yes, we can invite you in some years and have the experience.
Yeah.
Next question.
My name is Eric. I would like to ask you, can you use every kind of crop in no-till system, or is it wheat, barley, and canola, or whatever?
The wider the rotation, the better and the easier it is. So when you change between a winter crop and a spring crop and a broadleaf crop and a cereal crop, that's the easiest way to have always a change, because also because better weed management and residue management. I could imagine nearly every crop. Forage maize could be a problem when you grow it more or year after year, because soil structure is so poor after harvest. Sugar beets, the establishment of the crop is not a problem. Even forage maize, sugar beets, potatoes maybe, but the harvest can be a problem. So after harvest of sugar beets and after forage maize, you can stand there and have a disaster. So you're stopped at that moment with direct drilling, or you need a longer recreational time. So my fantasy would be enough to have an establishment system for nearly all crops. Grass seeds, yes, no problem. Could be. We have to find management systems to get rid of the grass. Maybe after, when you have red fescue or anything like that, it could be a problem. But establishment is not a problem. Harvest is not a problem. Then it could become interesting, and with some types of grass. But there should be always a solution. Takes experience, and there is experience around the world, but the adaptation to your farm and your situation and that specific year and the situation you're standing in, that is not so easy sometimes.
Yes, do we have one more question? 2 questions, and I think it will be the last 2 questions.
Hey, my name is Michael, and thank you for a very interesting session. I would like to know, do you think you're more busy now, or do you think you have more time with your wife, or when you're doing it? No-till?
It is a target for me or an aim for me to have more time and more relaxed life. It is more relaxed. I'm not so pushed into the dates and do this then, and it's a bit more relaxed because I have more opportunities or options to do farming now. But I have I have less time, I would say. My wife says always I have less time than before, because I do so much research and reading and information, and that takes a little or very, very much time. I'm not sitting on the tractor much time, but all around is taking much, much more time. So it's not easy. When you get out the plow and the power hoe, just stupid up and down and it will work for you, but that's different. You don't sit on a tractor much, but much mind work.
What about the economy?
Yes, as I said, economy depends on the yield, so you save some money with that, certainly, but not that much that you can lose or afford to lose much yield. So it's difficult to say. I wouldn't do it if I was not convinced that it would work and be economic for me, but I can't show the economy the last 2 years. It was too difficult.
Yes, I think we'll take the last questions.
Yeah, my name is Jesper, and I'm thinking about the heat from the soil for your new crop that you seed. My experience is that when you plow, you're releasing some nitrogen, and the crop is growing a bit faster in the spring. And I can see we're doing minimum till. They are not that fast as the plowing system.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking with your straws and everything must be like a carpent.
Yeah.
But I can see your pictures saying otherwise, that it's quite warm in the winter time. But what about in the spring? Is the soil getting later warm for seeding than else?
Mm.
What are your experience?
Yeah. I haven't measured soil temperatures, but you could be right that the soil temperature is a bit lower in a no-till situation. But as I said, you are comparing min-till and plow, and now think about no-till. So there are 3 different systems. Don't compare them. You have to watch each separate. And as I said, min-till is a wired system. So don't compare them. And my observation or the rule of thumb is in the autumn, you need to drill 2 weeks earlier than you would do under conventional or plowing system to have the same pre-winter development, because they develop slower. In the spring, it's the other way around. You have to wait a bit longer to have the soil dried up and warmed up enough. And it looks that your neighboring fields are further ahead, or it looks as they are indeed as the first time, but they outcompete during June or anywhere, because I think the reason may be that, as I said, the soil life in the tilled fields are all down, and they have a kickstart and a push from the tillage, because mineralization and breakdown of residues and all microorganisms. But then the soil has to restructure, and soil life has to restructure, and that gives a delay when the no-till soils just grow far away. That's my idea. I don't know. That's not proven anyhow. But observation is, in the spring you need patience. You have to watch all your neighbors working and sit and wait. But then when they grow just straight through and outcompete by June. So I always say, when Pfingsten is a festival date. What is Pfingsten in Danish? East Pfingsten. Yeah, I say. My father always said, "Oh, look at the neighbors; it look much better and better developed." And I always said, "Wait until Pfingsten, and when they are better by Pfingsten, I have done something wrong. But they should be equal or even better." And usually, I've always seen it was that way.
Yes, I think we have to cut off here. You talked about this pill to forget everything. I think we will not forget your good presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.